Ah, hi Volpe. I just wanted to say how excited I am about you becoming an allied race.
Aw, hey Taliesin. Yeah, we're totally stoked. It's gonna be awesome!
Yeah, awesome. I mean, at long last, I get to play my very own Vulpera Druid.
I'm afraid we can't be druids, buddy.
What? Of course you can.
No, that's not something we can do.
Don't be silly, of course you can. Look, it says so in this Blizzard statement. Long live the blessed and glorious state of oh no, that's the wrong statement. But of course you can. I mean, all of you guys can be druids, right?
All us guys?
Yeah, like you and the Tauren and the Worgen and... Okay, so yeah, you can't be druids, that's fine, I get it.
Wait. Are you saying you think all us animals are the same? Is that what you're saying?
That's not really what I'm saying.
You think that just because we've got fur like them, we can be druids like them? Oh yeah, well you've all got fur. Would you say that to a Pandaren?
Well, no, because Pandarens can be druids, can't they? So...
No, they can't, Taliesin.
Oh no, you're right, no, I just assumed they could... for some reason.
This is outrageous. Taliesin, you should be ashamed of yourself.
I know, and I am. I'm sorry, genuinely. I'm really ashamed of myself, and I'm sorry. Would it help if I gave you a belly rub?
Knowledge is power.
Hello, Internet. Taliesin here, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset. Taliesin and Evitel's wondrous wisdom show in a week that should have been an #1 outright bullseye for World of Warcraft, with Ian's big 8.3 stream announcement giving Blizz some much needed hype and good press. Hype and good press that I think that as WoW players we all enjoyed and revelled in for all of almost an entire day before the entire week became lost in one whole heap of shit show. I'm talking, of course, about the Hearthstone Hong Kong scandal, which has rocked our entire hobby, popping up, as these things often do, to remind us that no matter how much we may love a product we consume or the amazing people who make it, big corporations don't give a shit if we live or die, and global capitalism has no values beyond growth and profits, which means it's going to oftentimes be complicit in regimes and political systems which are kind of abhorrent, which is why, by the way, it's a bit silly to identify capitalism as a core part of your moral value system, because that's a total paradox. Anyway, if you would like to know our in-depth views on this whole sorry incident, and by that I mean my views, but they are Evitel approved, obviously, just like this tie, then check out the Weekly Reset special report that we put out on Friday, which is why this video is a little bit late and why Evie can't be in it, because when we're late we miss our shooting slot. But it does mean that this episode can be mercifully free of all that shit and we can just talk some juicy, awesome, tentacly goodness. Or at least we can in a minute, because to put a great big shit-covered bow on this for now, we should probably just mention what's changed since that special report. After what seemed like 1,000 years of silence, J. Allen Brack himself put out a statement, which is terrible. I mean, it's fine, it says everything that you'd expect it to say in as bland and corporate and meaningless a way as it possibly can, because of course it does. It doesn't actually apologise for being shit, but it essentially does, and it also says, I want to be clear, our relationships in China had no influence on our decision, which, okay, so literally nobody believes that, obviously. This whole thing reeks of a Taiwan office doing something pretty stupid, and then the main US base spending a week trying to fix it without being seen to ride roughshod over their decision and piss off their largest growing market. And yes, all this is shitty and distasteful, but in the short term at least, the most important thing for me is that the right thing has kind of been done regarding the 3 human beings involved. The 2 casters have been given 6-month bans rather than written off of Blizzard's books entirely, and Blitzchung, the player at the heart of this controversy and #1 most popular name for new WoW characters for the past 6 days, has also had his ban reduced to 6 months from a year, is able to still compete in Hearthstone in general, and has had his Season 2 winnings, according to him around $10,000, returned to him. As I discussed at length in our special report, wanting to keep politics out of their official interview broadcast isn't necessarily a bad position for Blizzard to take. If Blitzchung was wearing a mask and goggles but shouting his support for Antifa, then I'm pretty sure the discourse this week would have been quite different, and that's probably a headache we could all do without when we just want to watch some people play a card game. But I said I wanted the ban shortened and his money returned, and so I should be happy, right? Yeah, I know, but 6 months still seems over the top for me, and for Blitzchung as well, who put out a statement of his own, saying that he also thinks the 6 months is a bit much, but accepts it may not have been a responsible platform to air his views. And that he is thankful that Blizz got in touch with him to try and sort it out, and also blessing to Blizzard, which to our Western ears sounds a bit weird and subservient, but in reality is just a feature of formal language in Asia, which is why the uproar over the perceived submissiveness of Blizzard's Weibo statement was also a bit stupid. But hey man, there is a lot of money to be made in outrage. I get it, I get it. Now that of course isn't the end of the issue. It's stupid to think that there's going to be an atmosphere of happy consumerist loveliness at BlizzCon, and it's hard to see if Blizzard will ever truly recover from this in the eyes of most players. That's probably a good thing, but then I would say that because you know how I feel about multinational corporations. I don't like them. And also political regimes that put pressure on businesses to censure employees who make political protests at work. I really don't like them. What I would ask is that if you are feeling the need right now to comment on these things, please go and put it in the comments of the special report, where you might actually get a response. Do it here, you're just going to get a link to this video and you'll look dumb. Okay, so that's out of the way, and it's time for the real reason you are all here. Tentacle Watch! And yes, it turns out that 8.3 tentacles are everywhere. Look, here are some. This episode is far too late for the whole here's what's in 8.3 thing. I really don't want to do like a list of features, but yeah, Vulpera and Mechanome allied races are adorable, Mechanome racials are flat out baller OP, and everyone is getting very excited about the fact that Titan Forging is dead! There is no more Titan Forging. That is a thing which is going away because Ian promised it on his stream, and that's definitely 100% what he actually definitely did say, and so we all have permission to be very excited about the death of Titan Forging and how it's getting completely dead. And when 8.3 rolls along, if it isn't completely dead, like if it exists in any slightly altered form, then we are all in our absolute total rights to be very angry and cause big smelly shit shows, because what happened was, and I don't know if you know this, but Ian definitely promised that Titan Forging was getting dead, and that's definitely what's happening. I think he said it on some stream or something, I can't remember now. But anyway, Titan Forging is dead. It's not. There's the actually promised Goblin and Worgen heritage armor, and actually that's the real reason that Evie isn't here today, because she's just been skipping around the park giggling about the Worgen top hats since Monday. And if you want to know my thoughts and reactions to the actual gameplay content in 8.3, then I suggest you watch the other video we put out last week, because it will be more than happy to tell you. But the TLDR is... because yes, Ny'alotha is the patch I've been waiting for, well, my entire WoW life, but especially since Battle for Azeroth was announced. Eldritchy tentacle old god shit is 1000% totally my jam, and I can't get enough of it, especially in 8.3, where, frankly, there isn't enough of it. And look, I don't want to seem like I'm being ungrateful here, okay? Because the assaults look fine, and the horrific visions in the Corrupted and Tentacly Stormwind and Orgrimmar are genuinely good fun. I like how involved the Mythic Plus Black Obelisk affix is, and importantly, Mythic Plus pros seem excited by it too, as is everyone about the new essences, because now everyone has got all the essences they need on their mains and all of their alts. What the community is pretty much crying out for is that, no, that was a shit show, obviously. Yeah, having so much fun with that garbage. Patch 8.2 basically murdered the fun of playing with alts, and 8.3 is just an exterminatus on top of it. Oh god, no, please, kill it or kill me, whatever. The new armor sets and weapons are, in my opinion, visually the best tier of the expansion. I love the holographic old god eye on the shoulders of the cloth set. I love the outrageous Predator-style backpiece on the plate helm, and almost everything about the plate set. The gaping maw of the leather helm is super icky, and I adore it, and even mail didn't get totally dicked this tier. Like, seriously, that is a legit awesome mail set. Oh, that's nice for you mail wearers, isn't it? That's lovely, isn't it? That's nice. The weapons are all tentacles and eyes, exactly as you want them to be. It's all just really cool. The Ny'alotha raid looks 1,000,000% legit, with the outside environments that are straight up a recreation of those haunting images of the Black Empire from Chronicle and the Azshara Warbringer. The huge, imposing architecture, which isn't quite as weird as I want it, and for some unknown reason has human-sized stairs everywhere, which seems a bit odd, but in general, It's perfect. The boss list is very intriguing, and some of the data mined broadcast text, which we will be looking at here, is tantalizing in the extreme. The 2 fights against Nosov at the end with that huge model are especially exciting, and I for one am extremely keen to learn how my transmog ruining Gift of Nosov hat, which I still wear, will be interacting with it, especially as one of the abilities that Nosov uses is literally called the Gift of Nosov. What's there in 8.3 looks astounding, but, and I don't want to sound ungrateful, I want more. Especially if, as it now seems, this is our big old god Black Empire moment before moving on to other things next expansion. Hints of which have been flying around all week and which we will look at also. I'm also not alone in worrying whether that Assault Horrific Vision gameplay loop will really be enough to keep us playing day to day, and my gut feeling is that I don't think it will be. I mean, obviously it's not all there yet, there's going to be story quests and whatnot as well, but I doubt the narrative will be anything like as involved as the first 3 weeks of Argus. I don't know. And overall, the 8.3 patch and subsequent data mining, which I imagine will continue apace right up until Blizzcon, was initially met with joy, then slight trepidation, and now a lot of speculation. And having now touched on the joy and the trepidation, I'd like to spend the rest of this weekly reset looking at that speculation. Speculation for 8.3. Speculation for the story. Who will win? Who will lose? Who will lead? And who will bone? And spoiler, but I hope you like boning because it basically looks like everyone is about to bone. And speculation about where this will lead and what next expansion will look like. And spoiler, but I hope you like the Lich King. So, starting with 8.3 itself, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Taliesin, what could there possibly be to speculate about 8.3? We now know exactly where it's set. You were right about Ny'alotha, by the way, well done. Who the big bad is. You were right about Nosov, by the way, well done. And what the content will all look like. What could you possibly speculate on here? Well, it's a good question, I'm glad you asked, and bear with me because this is not necessarily my speculation. I'm just the messenger reporting this to you, okay? But as has been noted, the actual day-to-day content of 8.3 seems a little bit sparse to some, which has some people thinking maybe there's more. As we pointed out on this channel a lot over the past year, Blizzard staff, and especially Team 2, who look after WoW, seem very excited about BlizzCon this year. I mean, probably not so much now when every panel will be a shit show of Hong Kong protests, but generally about the event and what is going to be revealed. And obviously there's a new expansion and clearly they think that's going to be really great, but the general feeling is that there is going to be a surprise beyond an expansion reveal. Like, I don't know, maybe WoW 2? Nah. Or maybe some unannounced content in 8.3, like maybe a new zone or a dungeon or whole other storyline, something that fleshes out this presumably climactic patch of the expansion. And what could that be? To be honest, I'm completely loath to even talk about this possibility, not because I don't think it's possible, but because, let's be honest, it's very unlikely and kind of a little bit insulting to the devs. Like, Ian just showed us loads of 8.3 stuff and people are like, oh, that looks great, Ian. I'm sure it'll be really great when the extra secret stuff is added. Kind of like how season 4 of Sherlock was so terrible that die-hard fans were convinced that there was going to be a secret 4th episode aired the week after the season finished that would somehow make everything right, and that the previous 3 episodes had kind of been bad on purpose. 8.3 does not look like a Sherlock season 4. Like I say, what's there looks really great. But there is a part of me that thinks that there could be something else coming at BlizzCon for the patch. Not new content, like a dungeon or zone or whatever, but more a change that essentially comes with 9.0, but will arrive in-game sometime before. Like how the first allied races and old world scaling arrived at the tail end of Legion, though it was technically a BFA feature. And I think I'm even willing to stick my neck out and guess what those things might be. No one's talked about the level squish for a while, and that's a possibility of course, but how about something really world-changing, like losing the race restrictions on factions. After all, the war is over, the Horde is under new leadership, and I can't be bothered putting up the red spoiler bot yet, so that's all I'll say, and there's a new era of peace on the horizon. Obviously, Horde and Alliance still essentially don't like each other much, which will result in skirmishes in the open world and battlegrounds, but they are not officially at war, and the links between the two factions are stronger than ever. We have Night Elf Sentinels, who were recently raised by Sylvanas into the Forsaken. We have the human and Tauren leaders being super mega best friends forever like. We have orcs completely rudderless, and gnomes also with no leader, as well as some new mechanical cousins to get used to, and Tyrande is somewhere doing something too. And of course, there are those very suspicious looking Horde and Alliance logos on the character select screen, which still look like they haven't quite been utilised in the way they were intended. What if that is your big 8.3 Blizzcon reveal, that you can now choose which faction your new character can join. And it's when you make that choice that the faction logo appears next to your character, but in colour. So yeah, if you don't do anything, then your Tauren is going to be de facto the Horde. But if you so choose, there's a little quest line you take where your allegiance switches and your alliance now. What if there was a D-Cataclysm also planned, whereby the old world zones in Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor had the context and storylines of a 10-year-old expansion neutralised, so that the quests around there were timeless and designed to accommodate that? And yes, this idea is getting pretty big and unwieldy now, but I could see that happening, and it would be just the kind of next expansion feature that Blizz could happily roll out while the old expansion was still in progress, just like old world scaling and allied races. Which leads us to that beautiful data-mined broadcast text that the internet has been awash with since the first PTR builds hit. Obviously Redbot here, because this gives away a lot of story stuff, like how a conversation between Alleria and Tyrallion suggests that we will defeat Nosov pretty comprehensively in Ny'alotha, and that the old god has fallen, suggesting that he fails to unleash the Black Empire all over Azeroth, and that whole Black Empire expansion, which will see a big Black Empire world redesign that lots of players had been hoping for, looks like it certainly won't be happening. It looks like we know exactly how the fall of the old god is brought about too, but before we get on to the real plot spoilers, I just want to highlight that after a couple of years of intense faction warfare, it's time for our heroes to do what most people do when a big war ends: they bone. The boomer meme that you see everywhere at the moment is of course referring to baby boomers, the huge generation of people born in the baby boom, directly following the Second World War, when families were reunited and, with a future of peace on the horizon after 6 years of uncertain conflict, totally just boned. Like, loads. They just boned out a whole generation who went on to live a lifetime of peace and prosperity and then deny that opportunity to the generations that came after them. But anyway, the same thing seems to be happening in WoW after the Fourth War. Broadcast text totally suggests that Thalysra is doing her level best to further diplomatic relations with the Blood Elves by being less than subtle about her desire for Lorthamar to visit her in Suramar, despite the fact that he's got a ton of work to do in Silvermoon, and Lorthamar being all like, well, I've got a ton of work to do in Suramar, but okay. Yeah, they're totally gonna bone. And then there's the slightly heartbreaking snippet between Rathian and Kalagos, where Rathian seems very interested in Kalec's experience with loving a human, but totally not because he might be interested in doing the same thing, because I can't even think of like a single human who Rathian would want to bone, and I'm sure you can't either, so honestly I don't even know why we're talking about it. What a waste of time. My favourite though is for Spy Master Shaw talking to Valera about how there is someone I'd like to get to know better. And I don't think that's in a kind of, I think they're evil so I need to keep an eye on them type way like it usually is. It is totally in a, I want to bone them kind of way. So the big question is, who has Shaw got his sights on? We can assume it's not Valera because she's the one he's talking to, and this isn't a mid-90s high school rom-com. Some have suggested that it might be Commander Wormbane, since they've basically been hanging out on a boat together all expansion, and you know how things are. But ladies and gentlemen, I think I know who the object of Shaw's desire is, and I think you do too. Internet, it is time to ship Shaw and Flynn, because it's perfect. The uptight workaholic and the vivacious loose cannon who seemingly have nothing in common, but go on crazy adventures together and realise they are the perfect team. It's basically like Tango and Cash, but with boning. And anyway, it doesn't matter what you think, because the internet has already spoken on this issue, and it's a thing now, live with it. And although it is mostly boning in the broadcast text, that's not all there is, because there is also the small matter of how we defeat Nosov, which, as predicted by many, will be with the Blade of the Black Empire, formerly the prison of Xal'atath and every Shadow Priest's secret bay. In the Dark Inquisitor Xanesh fight in Ny'alotha, we come across Queen Azshara, getting tortured by the Void, and on defeating the boss, she tells us of her plan to use the blade to take Nosov out, which is now of course our plan, and yes, Spoilerbot is still there, good, but it doesn't sound like Azshara stays friendly very long. Just as interesting though, is lines from a flashback scene with Sylvanas where the pact between the two is revealed. She wanted the heroes led to Nazjatar for her plan to free Nosov, and then get all stabby on him with the blade apparently, or so she says. Sylvanas just wanted all the heroes dead, just like we thought. No old god influence on Sylvanas' side, but I think that's been pretty explicit since the Loyalist ending cutscene. In that dialogue, Azshara also says,
"Treacherous banshee, do you think I am blind to the darkness you seek to unleash?"
I don't know about you fam, but I'm really keen to find out exactly what that darkness Sylvanas is planning on unleashing. And I don't think it's going to take all that long to find out, because this brings us to our last bit of speculation about the next expansion. The expansion that will certainly be revealed at BlizzCon, and which everyone on Team 2 sounds so gosh damn excited about. More excited than if the whole expansion had already been spoiled in a very accurate leak? Impossible to tell, but all roads do certainly seem to be leading towards a death-themed expansion, which has been pretty obvious since Drustvar, but even more so in 8.3 towards Northrend and the Lich King. And now, broadcast text, you have my attention. Because yes, Jaina and Anduin talk about Talia, Bolvar Four-Dragon's daughter, who Anduin seems to be having cold feet about telling the truth. Maybe like he will tell a lie to her, like maybe the first of 3 lies. Where have I heard that before? And those pant-wettingly exciting Death Knight, Allied Race and Pandaren skins which have been revealed. So the thing is, if these races are getting Death Knight options, it can only mean that Blizzard is finally moving on from the Arthas-themed DK starting experience, which means a redesign, which means a new story, a story that involves Bolvar raising lots of new Death Knights, which is interesting, isn't it? Especially because we now know from the Vol'jin questline in BFA that Icecrown just so happens to be a gateway to the Shadowlands. As in, like, literally a gateway to the Shadowlands. As in, like, it's a way of getting to the Shadowlands, although I can't see why that would be relevant to anything. I know Bolvar's like a pretty straight up kind of guy and everything, but what if he has no choice in the matter? Because here's the thing, fam. Sylvanas currently has no army and could really do with one. Bolvar's got one that Sylvanas is very familiar with already. I don't know if that Shadowlands leak is correct about next expansion or not, but suddenly everyone is going wild about the return of the Lich King, and that is definitely some hype that I can get behind. But if you watch this channel like lots, you'll know there is a different title that I'm even more excited about. The Wrath of the Lich Queen. But either way, you get the feeling that it's all about the dead from here on in. We have the new Forsaken leader in Kalia Menethil, except she's not, that's just how a lot of people are reporting it. What's actually happened is that Lillian Voss has reached out to Kalia, knowing how she helped Derek break free from the despair around his own undeath, to try and work the same trick on those undead Night Elf Sentinels we were talking about earlier. And yeah, she might well end up becoming the Horde Forsaken leader for sure, but it certainly hasn't happened yet, and it's just as likely that she might decide to stay on the Alliance side and just take those dead Night Elves and a handful of other Forsaken with her. There's Lili teaming up with us in the 8.3 assaults because the Mogu are back in weirdly big numbers, and oh yeah, we recently learned through one of those island expedition quests that the Mogu have been really getting into necromancy recently. And of course, the new Il'gynoth whispers, which are a bit harder to unravel than the previous Emerald Nightmare versions, but which definitely seem to have an undeathly vibe going on. The Blind Queen wields a scepter of bone, and I don't think he's talking about Felissa and Lorthamar. I'm looking forward to even more data mining fun times this week as the revelations of BlizzCon draw ever closer. A BlizzCon that Evie has been working especially hard towards, because now it looks like we should be able to have a live weekly reset, filmed in front of a real-life audience on the Sunday after the event to discuss everything in depth. We'll have more details about that soon, but yeah, outrageously, I think it might be happening. Be there, and thank you for being here with us today. Hey, look everyone, look how long it took to make this video. Evitel's back. Hey, Evitel.
Hey, one more thing, because Taliesin completely forgot to tell you about it. We're linking all of the Wowhead articles below. Keep an eye on them, because there's going to be more juicy stuff dropping at any given moment.
Yeah, Wowhead.
.com.
That's the address. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who make all of our work possible. So as you're smashing that like button, say, this is for you, patrons. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Blitzchung. No, alas, my name is Taliesin. I've got a feeling this won't be the only video this week as more news comes out, but we will definitely be back for the weekly reset, without a doubt. So from me and Evitel, until then, cheerio.